Hi, this is Carl. Welcome to another SMB Community Podcast, and I'm joined today by my very longtime friend, Arlin Sorensen. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Carl. It has been a long journey together, and I'm glad to be with you today.
Yeah, it's been, I think, at least 15 years that I've known you, so it's quite amazing. So Arlin is the Vice President of Peer Groups at ConnectWise, and why don't you give a little bit of information about you and then a little broader information about the ConnectWise system, and we'll get into the peer groups in a minute.
Okay. Well, I grew up on a farm here in Iowa. That's still where I live, still where our offices are here in Iowa, and fell in love with technology in the early 80s and started a business, ran a managed service company for 27 years before I sold it in 2012, and then put my time into peer groups and growing organization to help partners help each other, basically, and have been doing that for 18 years before we sold to ConnectWise the 1st of January in 2018. So been around the industry a long time. I've earned all this gray hair, and it's been a fun ride. The thing that's, I think, most unique about this industry is the people, and the fact that the community is so strong and people are so willing to be engaged together, and that's always one of the things I appreciate about you and your work, Carl, is the amount of information you share with the community and the effort that you make to help everybody grow and succeed.
Well, thank you. It is a kind of a life calling at some level. So, it's funny. I've been to your farm only once, but I think you grew your organization to be, maybe you had people in 6 states, or you did support in 6 states and had like 50 employees, or right in that neighborhood. And
102, actually.
102? Wow. Yep. So when people come to me and they go, oh, nobody wants to buy managed services in, and they pick a city.
Right.
I'm always like, I'm sorry. If Arlin can build a massively successful organization across 6 states from a farm, I'm sorry, you can sell managed services wherever you are. It's just, that's things. Yeah. I don't even listen to them beyond that.
That's so true, and the lesson that we grabbed onto early is, if we take care of the customer, we can serve them from anywhere, and that really became true when the internet took off. So that gave us the advantage and the ability to grow and scale, and you just got to take care of the customer, and they'll do business with you from anywhere.
Right. Well, you also have to be willing to pivot. So many people are stuck. There was just a thing on Facebook where somebody was saying, hey, does anybody know how I can take my Office 365 licenses for SharePoint and install them on a local server? And basically all the response was, huh? What? Why would you do that? Right. But, there are people who literally just, they keep doing it the old way. And I think you started with Macintosh. You guys have pivoted again and again and again, because we're in an industry where you can't sell last year's solution, whatever it is.
Well, the customer needs continue to change, and so you have to be willing to pivot and make those adjustments. And yeah, I started with Apple II Plus back in the early years, and came up through the Mac and then to the PC, and of course we went through break fix to on-site services to managed services to cloud services, and we're not done. I mean, we've got IoT coming, we've got AI coming, we got all kinds of new things that are coming quickly. So the speed of change, to me, that's one of the bigger challenges I see in the future. Is it's going faster and faster and faster.
Right. Well, I've been telling people for like a year and a half, I think there's never been more opportunity in our industry ever than there is today.
Absolutely.
You just have to pick a star and grab on, because there's so much opportunity everywhere. I wish I was 10 years old, So,
well, I would love being younger too, but and I think it's really true that you can't pick them all, and that's what a lot of folks want to do is do a little grab here, grab there, and not really go after one or two things and build their company around it, and that's really a key to success.
Right. Well, there was a time, I always tell people, you could literally know everything there was to know about the internet. Like the,
Right.
like in my lifetime, in your lifetime, that there was that period. But now you can't even know everything there is about graphics. there's so much out there that you have to narrow it down. You can't be the super generalist and move very far. So let me talk about peer groups. So you guys have probably the biggest and most successful peer group organization in the world, at least for IT. So I know that it got started back when I was in HTG, way back when, but right now you have like hundreds and hundreds of members, right?
Yeah, we serve almost 600 companies globally today. So we're in North America. We have members in Australia, New Zealand, and then we have folks in Europe. And so across those three geos, we're pressing 600 companies today. And you know, it just continues to grow and expand. And with our additional resources now through ConnectWise, we'll be growing that even further and in more distinct areas of the world. We've had people coming to us from all over the world to bring peer groups to their area, but you know, when you're a small company of 28 people in a farm in Iowa, it's hard to reach all those places. But we got a lot of things that we'll be able to do now with additional resources and the exciting things that are part of the ConnectWise acquisition.
So way back when, I think I was in HTG 13. Everybody makes the big trip to Harlan. Yeah. Do you still do that when you start up a group in Australia?
We don't bring them over from Australia or the UK, but if it's a North American group, we bring them to the farm. And you know, a big part of that is really getting to know our team and then understanding the culture that underlies HTG. It's, you know, the success of peer groups is really all about people understanding the purpose of peer groups, which is not about me. It's about helping the people around me to succeed. And when I do that, then I'm going to gain from the help that they provide me. And you know, it's not, a lot of people question whether that can really work. We've proven that it can, and there's a lot of peer group organizations that make it happen. But it is a unique kind of mindset. It's not for everyone, but those that buy in and really get it, it still is having the kind of, it's having more impact today than it ever has.
And for folks who haven't been a member of a peer group, can you kind of walk through what a meeting looks like?
Yeah, you know, our program is really built around 4 quarterly meetings, 2 days at a time. So they spend 8 days together throughout the year, and we have a framework that we use based on planning and execution and accountability. So we ask each member to create a plan. We have a plan for each quarter. We start with the business plans in Q4, so they're ready to go on January 1st. And it's amazing how many companies don't use business plans as a foundation to grow their business, but it's pretty important. And even more important is having a budget to go with it. But that's the Q4 plan. That gets us ready to begin the year. In Q1, then we focus on leadership planning. And as companies grow, leadership becomes an even bigger and bigger part of what they need to have in place if they're going to scale. So we focus really on 3 key areas. One, the owner, the founder, the leader of the company has got to grow themselves. And sometimes we tend to forget that. We think everybody else needs to grow, but you know, we're as good as we need to be, and that's never really the case. So part of it's us getting our act together as the leader. Secondly, we got to have a number 2 in mind. Who's going to replace us in the event something happens, or at some point we want to just do something different?
Right.
And so many companies don't have a plan for what happens, you know, if the leader is not there. So that's a part of what we try to do, is encourage companies to have a strategy for all their key people to have a backup. And then thirdly, how are we going to build the team around us? and we want to encourage folks to, number one, invest. One of the things that amazes me about IT companies in general, Carl, is they'll spend thousands and thousands of dollars to get a technical certification and say no to a $99 spend a day and learn how to lead better kind of
right.
training. It's just we're out of whack in how we look at the world, but we got to invest in our people, and so those three things make up the leadership plan concept. In the next quarter, in Q2, we focus on legacy planning, and that's really the foundation that our program is built on. Understanding what we're trying to accomplish, both in our business, long term, and in our life, and how we're going to choose to use our resources, time, talent, and treasure to accomplish those things. And then in Q3, we focus on the life plan, and that's really what we're going to do with our time outside of the workplace. For most of us in this business, the workplace gets more than half our time, but there's still some left, and if we're not intentional about how we use it, it just kind of vanishes. So those plans are kind of the foundation. Then every quarter, people set goals around how they're going to actually go do something about those things. And that's where the group comes into play, is they help hold each other accountable. At the next meeting, you come back and you defend how you did on your goals. And we use the survivor model, so groups can vote people out if they are not executing. And it happens on a somewhat regular basis if people aren't doing what they say they're going to do. So that's really where people get kind of the bang for the buck, is it makes them do things that they know they ought to do. But as business owners, most of us run our company so we can do what we want to do, and that's not always the right thing. So
right.
Peer group can push you to do the things you know you have to do.
Well, I really do like personally, because I wrote Relax, Focus, Succeed. I love the balance focus to say, look, my business, yes, it needs to make money, but let's be true, you can make money doing anything. you
right.
Don't have to work this hard to make, money. So there's that piece. And then there's also hey, you have to have a life. If you work and work and work until you die, what have you contributed to your family or the world? It's I don't know, that some people think that sounds all, noble and whatever, but it's just reality. You've got to take care of yourself, and you have to live for a purpose. And, your business, if you're in small business, I believe your business exists to fulfill the dreams and desires of the owner, right? If you work for Intel, that's not the case, right?
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with Intel, but, so we don't have enough intention, I think, when we start our businesses. And so sometimes people don't start paying attention to it till they get in their 40s and 50s and realize, hey, wait a minute, there should be more to life than this. Yep.
Well, a lot of us are accidental entrepreneurs. We didn't really set out to be business owners, and it just kind of happened to us. And unless we, stop and really think about it, we can just work until we're done, basically, and miss most of what is important along the way.
Right. It's interesting. A good friend of mine turned 50 not too long ago and sent me an email. It basically said, hey, I read your newsletter and I have a silly question, but do you have any idea what kind of hobbies I should have between now and when I die? Because I don't really have anything to do in my spare time. And I thought, wow, you get to that point in your life and you don't have any hobbies? Like that's a serious sign of danger. But at least he's aware that that's the case,
Well, and what we see now is, as we've got a number of folks that are exiting the business, they don't know what to do with their time because they haven't developed hobbies. They haven't really built a lot of friendships. They've just worked, and they get to the end of their career, and that's where all their validation and worth has come, and then they just get lost. And I've talked to a number of folks that said, I should be the happiest I've ever been because I don't have to work and I've got money, but I'm the most miserable that I've ever been, and I need to figure out what to do. And the key is to figure that out before you quit, so you don't have to go through that valley. But it is really important for us to get some balance in life, because there is far more to life than work, and it's important that we start to learn that as early as possible.
I agree. So on the business side of things, when folks are in the group, how long do they stay? I mean, do you have people who've been there since day one?
Don't have anybody that's been there since day one except me. But you know, our average member stays about a little over 4 years. We have a number of members that have been with us 10 to 12 years. Kind of started in the same time frame that you started in back in the late 2007, 8, 9 frame. But you know, the average one comes and goes, and the interesting thing is they'll often drop out for a year and then they'll come back. They identify some big things they need to go work on, so they'll ask to take a year off to really kind of go get their act together and accomplish some of the bigger things, and then they'll come back to the group or to a new group and take another run at it. So the other thing we do have, Carl, is we have an online version that meets monthly for about 90 minutes a month. And we have people that will bounce back and forth between the face-to-face groups and the online group as well. Or they'll send, you know, second or third in command kind of folks to the online group, so they're getting some exposure to peer interaction, and the main principal may be in a face-to-face group. So there's a lot of movement between our programs, and our actually fastest growth program right now is a service executive program, which is designed for service managers. We have about 160 people that are involved in that program today, where the folks inside an organization that are charged with driving service are meeting a couple of times a year face-to-face for the same kind of experience, but totally focused on service metrics and managing service people.
You know, I just taught a class on managing the service board and talked about the centrality of the service manager in any IT business. Yep. I mean, dealing with not just clients, but vendors, the front office, the salespeople, the clients' vendors, and on and on and on. And, you know, I hope in most organizations that's the person that gets picked to be number 2, but they need to figure out, okay, well, who's number 3? Because if I have to be number 1,
right.
I need a new number 2.
That's exactly right. Well, and the thing that's kind of amazed us, but really not, is that the communication between an owner and their service manager is one of the weakest links in a lot of companies. You know, all of us make a lot of assumptions that people are getting what we're trying to communicate with them, often without actually saying anything, but just because we're like in the same area that they should pick it up. We really see that to be the case with service managers. They're so busy that they don't really have, in their own mind, have time to meet with an owner on a regular basis. And so one of the things we do when we start a new group is really ask them, do you know what success looks like for your position? Has the owner given you real metrics that you're supposed to be driving the service team to hit? And a lot of times they really have never been told. They've made some assumptions, and that's one of the things they get out of the group is they at least get to see what some other folks are really trying to accomplish. But communication to that role is really an area that a lot of companies need to focus a lot more on.
Yeah, well, and there's so many levels of what you need to know, because I think we pick service managers for the most part because they have the technical prowess, right? That's the badge of honor in our industry. But then it's like, okay, but can you manage people? Can you manage money? Can you figure out what metrics are? Can you run an Excel spreadsheet? I mean, you know, and then customer service and sales management. I mean, it goes on and on and on. That is probably the hardest job in any service industry, but certainly in IT, where, you know, where we stand on shifting ground every day of our business. Yeah. So.
Well, and the other part of that question is not just can you, but do you want to? Because a lot of them don't want to do that kind of stuff. They like to fix things. They like to be the hero out in the field, and stick them behind a desk, and it's just like a sentence to misery.
Right. Yeah, it's back to the old, you got the right people on the bus. Now are they in the right seats? So, because you might have a great person who's just not made out to be a service manager. So, and that's tough, because usually when a business is growing to the point where you need a dedicated service manager, it's very small, and there's a tendency to put your best friend in that position, or put whoever's been longest in your company. But that's probably one of the earliest, hardest decisions to make, is hiring the right service manager.
Well, and it's hard to undo once you put somebody in that seat. If they don't fit there or like it there, it feels like a demotion to go back to the field. And so it is an area that we really encourage companies to slow down and have the conversation and try to do all you can to make sure it's going to be a good fit. Because I see a lot of companies that do promote, their best person, only to lose them later when they really don't want that job, and they can't go back to the field because of pride or whatever. So
if a company has a service manager that they want to educate, grow up, mature, can they join and just have that one person go to that one set of meetings?
They can. Yeah, each of our programs are all independent, and so folks can opt to have people in our service, or we have a sales management program like this as well, or the online program. We also have a version of the peer groups that meet 2 times a year rather than 4 times a year, and then they do some virtual meetings in between. So we've got a variety of different kinds of programs. We actually have groups for M&A now, so we just started those last month, that are specifically targeted at companies that either want to buy or sell in the next 12 to 18 months. So we've got a lot of different options out there today, and people can be in any or all the programs. We have a lot of companies that are in multiple programs, but you can start anywhere in this system.
All right. And we're going to put links to all of that down below. But so I actually have a note to talk to you about the M&A piece of it. So you were on my podcast the other day. What did you think about the comment that this is a bubble that is going to burst, maybe not in the next year, but in the next few years?
Well, I definitely think the price bubble is going to burst. The M&A motion is going to continue because of the age of people. Right. There's a huge number of folks that are in their 50s and 60s that are leading companies in this industry. And so the M&A trend is going to continue on, but we're at pricing levels that are not sustainable today, and certainly we are encouraging people to be careful and not get overextended and get tied into contracts that they're not going to be able to meet. And I'm seeing some of those kind of things happen today, that the world's going to have to go really, 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 really well for some folks to make it
right.
with these acquisitions they're doing. They're overpaying, and it's competitive, and people get emotional and they get caught up in the whole deal, and next thing you know, they're writing checks way bigger than they should, and then they got to figure out how they're going to work their way out of it. And
right.
I had a call with a partner last week. He's done 3 acquisitions in the last year. He's way over his head. He cannot cash flow his debt now. And, his question was, how do I get out of this? And I say, well, you get out of it by not getting into it, because once you're in it, it's pretty tough to get out.
Well, and it is a common way that companies fail, is to overextend because they're trying to grow the company faster than their cash flow. And, sometimes we take our eyes off the prize of value, of true value of your company. And, at the end of the day, one of the best things I got out of HTG was looking at certain numbers on a regular basis and knowing what is my EBITDA, what is the true value of my company, and what is it producing financially. And when you take your eyes off that and you say, if I get enough licenses, I can sell to this company or that company or whatever, then you're not focusing on the core things that will make you successful in the long run.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. More companies fail from cash flow than any other reason. And So it's really important to have, number one, your own finances in order before you go take on some more. But make sure you understand your cash flow capacity and know what you're able to do. Because if you don't, it can certainly take you down and sink your ship for sure.
So if folks want to engage, do you recommend that they start online, or is there a way to say, hey, well, maybe the in-person is a better place for me to start? How do they make that decision?
Yeah, I would say it's based on a couple of things. Certainly the size of the company is an important factor for success. Really, to succeed in the face-to-face program, you need to have 10 or so employees in your company at a minimum, because it's important that you're able to leave your workplace and not be tied to having to answer the phone, take calls, solve problems, all those things while you're away. And we kind of find that 8 to 10 is kind of where that transition's starting to happen. They've got people back at the office that can handle the majority of the emergencies, and so that really is one of the key factors. Another is really business maturity. That we find that size doesn't always equate to maturity, but the online program, I would say, is designed to help companies that are younger in their maturity cycle. It's probably half content delivery to them to help them learn, and the other half is group dynamic interaction. Whereas in the face-to-face group, it's a lot less content. We're working with more mature companies, and the value comes from the members talking to the members about the challenges they're facing. So that's kind of the way I would suggest is if you're a small company or a company that's really feels like you're trying to learn some of the basics, the online program is really a great place to start. If you've been around the industry, you feel like you've got a lot of the basic processes in place. You've got a service manager, for example, and are doing things consistently. Then the the face-to-face program is a great place to fit in. And then we have the one in the middle that's kind of a hybrid, 2 meetings face-to-face with some online stuff. So we kind of have got the bridge to get people from where they are to where ultimately we want to get them all is into face-to-face groups. That's where we have the maximum impact and the ability to really help drive business value into their organizations.
Right. That's funny because I only take on a couple of coaching clients a year, but one of my thresholds is, do you have enough of a support system in your company so that you can actually make changes, right?
Yeah.
And the next level is, basically in that 8 to 10 range, I agree with completely, is do you have the ability to change 2 things at the same time? Because a lot of people literally, they just keep being pulled back to their business again and again and again, and they can't sit in a meeting for an hour without having to go answer the phone. And that basically means that they might be able to change 1 thing at a time, but they definitely can't change 2 things at a time. So.
Yep. Well, with the survivor model, you miss a meeting, that's a problem. You miss 2 meetings, you don't have to worry about the 3rd one because the group will vote you out.
Very good. Well, believe it or not, we're basically out of time. So have you got a final message for us before we go?
Well, the message I'd like to share is that it's important to be thinking about how you're going to build value into your company as early as possible. All of us exit at some point in time, and you can't create value at the last minute. The most disheartening calls I get come from partners that have worked for 20, 25, 30 years on their business, and they get to the end and they need to sell because they're ready to retire, and they can't get enough money for their company to actually support their lifestyle in the future. And, I get the call, they send me their financials, somebody's trying to take advantage of me, and it's like, no, they're really not. You haven't created value. You got to understand what people are willing to pay for. And in today's market, that's recurring revenue. That's what people want to buy. So you got to structure your business in a way that drives that value. So someday you'll be able to exit and enjoy the life you work so hard to create.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for being here. And thank you for everything you do for the community.
Well, thank you, Carl. It's been a pleasure to be with you, and I appreciate all your hard work and all the wisdom you shared over the years.
All righty, thank you. So this is another SMB Community Podcast. Please subscribe to us and check it out on iTunes, and we will see you next time.